Hey Lisa, so this video only allows me to record for about 15 minutes, so I'll just go ahead and get started. Um, so we'll loop this. I feel like it's a little loopy. That's not the right word. It's a little ping-pongy is one the phrase of I like to use. So let's say we have um, pose A and then pose B and pose C. So that's what it feels like you have. It feels like you have the pose you start with, sort of this extreme pose you get to, and sort of this way you get there. Okay, so if you look at it here, if I go through here, you start on pose A, you go into pose B. I'm sorry, you start on pose A and you go to pose C, and then you're going back to pose A. Okay, and so it feels like to get from pose A to pose C, you're going through pose B, right? But then it kind of feels like you go back through pose B when you're going from C to A. Okay, and so what you get, if this makes any sense at all, is you get sort of this, ping-ponging back and forth of the animation. So it feels like you play it once and then you play it in reverse. And I know that's not really what's happening, but it's because the way you get back to pose A just feels a little too similar to how you got there. And so what you really need is another pose in here that kind of takes you through a different route. And so instead of feeling like it's ping-ponging back and forth, it'll feel like it's kind of, traveling this path over and over again. I hope that makes sense, but it feels like you can kind of see it like the in the hand specifically. The hand goes from this straight pose to this bent pose and then back to this straight pose. And it does that just by sort of curling and pulling back, and then it comes back by just doing the opposite of that, by going forward and uncurling. And so I think you just need to kind of mix up how that pose is. And you can do that by maybe having the arm travel in sort of a circle shape. Instead of twisting back and forth, maybe you twist back and forth, but you also lean in and out at a different rate. So all of these things will just kind of eventually build up to the character feeling a little less ping-pongy and a little more loopy, if that makes any sense at all. So the perspective idle, it's going to take it a second to, oh, that was a big one, 400 megabytes, so it may take it a minute to finish playing through here. Let me go ahead and pause the recording while it buffers. Okay, so I just went ahead and pulled that one down to my desktop, so we'll watch it here in just a second. Let's go ahead and look at the jump first where we have the chance. I believe. Let me pause again, hold on. Oh no, here it goes. So we have the jump. Okay, so I think your up feels good, but it feels like your character hits, sort of bounces off the ceiling there before she comes back down. So I think your push off feels pretty good, and your landing feels pretty good, but it's the where she hits the top. So if you were to look at your curve, the curve you're wanting should look something like this in your translate Y. Right, and I think probably the curve you're getting looks a little bit more like this. And so what's happening is you're hitting that point and immediately changing directions, and you kind of want it to feel like it slows down at the top and then comes back down. So again, we had already talked about this, but the butt's kind of doing this pooching out thing. And I think if you can grab that control and just kind of roll it in a little bit and sort of round that off, I think that'll help a little bit. I know she has tons of skinning problems, so some of that's going to be a skinning issue, but hopefully that will. I think you can kind of still mess around with the model a little bit with those controls and clean that up a little bit. So let's see if that downloaded and will play better now. Okay, so this is the standard idle. So this one's feeling a little better. My big note would be that I think the hands still feel a little kind of rigid. It's like the thumbs are sort of locked out. Most of the hand feels like it's still kind of in the bind pose. And it really is easier to pose that in a pose before you start moving, or as you're animating the character, than to try to go back and do it later, because it's going to be really tedious to kind of go in there and make the hands do what you want them to do. But I think that this is working pretty good. Um, I feel like maybe the character needs just a little bit of something going on in the face. She feels a little dead in there, so just giving her a little bit of a facial expression would help. So let's look and see what else you got. Run. So I plow the way through. There we go. So I think my first, my biggest note is I feel like she's not really pushing off the ground very much. It kind of feels like she's just kind of suspended by her hips and kicking her legs under her. And the reason for that is because you really want to feel like when the character pushes off the ground with the back foot, you want to feel like it pushes them up a little bit. And when they land on the front foot, you really want to feel that sink down into there. So it needs a little bit more up and down that kind of coincides with that. Um, and I think that up and down in the hips would actually result in some more rotation in the spine. So I think you need a little bit more compression and rotation in the spine. And I think that compression and rotation will really loosen up the torso, because the torso and the head feel really stiff. Now you have some rotation going on in the shoulders, but I don't really feel very much going on in the forearms and the hands. And I feel like you need to work just a little bit more on trying to get a convincing fist pose on the hands as well. So, and what is this one? It says side animation. Alright, so I think this may be the walk. So some of the same notes on the I feel the up and down. There's a little bit of a backward shift there. I can feel the hips kind of pop backwards. And so my guess is they drift forward over some of the animation, and at the end they kind of pop back. I also usually have my character on their contact pose. I try to straighten their leg out a little bit more. I can't believe I actually paused on the contact pose so perfectly. So like maybe slide that foot a little bit more just so you get a little bit of a straighter knee, and then maybe roll this up on the toe here a little bit so you get just a little bit more of a bent knee. But yeah, it feels like the character's taking steps with the knees slightly bent. And then I feel like the character's leaning from side to side on the walk, but I don't really feel much other like twist or forward and backward rotation in the spine. So it's making the spine feel a little stiff. But otherwise, this is. Oh, and the other thing is, I feel like again the rotation is mainly happening in the shoulder, and I'm not really feeling very much of anything happening in the forearm and the hand. So this is, those are just. This kind of feels like you've gotten the base poses in there, but you really need to go in and kind of loosen everything up, offsetting some stuff and making sure that the curves are working really well. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be emailing the grades or the temporary grades pretty soon. So thanks.